hard for me to believe that I'm speaking at this very inspiring event. And no, it's not because I'm a woman. Let's throw that elephant out of the room right away. It's because I followed a very different path from a lot of you here. I did not start coding when I was 8 years old. I did not build my website when I was a teenager. I got a late start, a little bit too late in my opinion. So in my first year of McMaster University, I was doing these rounds of information and recruitment sessions that a lot of the engineering departments held as a way to attract students. So there I was asking a program professor if the program would be right for me. And I was a little bit concerned that maybe just like my lack of experience was going to be an issue. So he beat around the bush a little bit, and then eventually he told me if I don't have any experience, the program was just not right for me. So that was a little bit disappointing, but I don't know what this says about my listening skills. I totally ignored his advice. But to be honest, there were times when the going got tough, and I thought about dropping out. So maybe he was right in one sense. Thinking about dropping out, my family was not supportive at all. My mom would just not hear any of it. No quitting, the family's not for quitters. Great, thanks, Mom. So I stuck to it. So that's when you start talking to yourself and you ask yourself, what would someone like Richard Branson do? Actually, it was more like, what would Randy Pausch do? As he said in his last lecture, the brick walls are not there to stop us. They're there to show us, to give us a chance to show how badly we want something. It's there to stop people who don't want it bad enough. So what he forgot to mention is that with a little bit of lateral thinking, sometimes you could just walk around the brick walls. I decided to take time out of school, and I did an internship for about 1.5 years. And after that, I felt a little bit more confident, and I had learned to program, and I went back and completed my degree. And it did pretty well in school. But you know what? It wasn't that the internship specifically was very fruitful. I think I just had been at the wrong environment at the wrong time, and that new environment, just going and getting a job, just helped something like click in my brain and just made sense for me personally. And that issue of being at the wrong environment became a recurring thing in my earlier years. Now you might be getting the impression that maybe I'm just a difficult person. And a few years ago, I probably would have agreed with you. There was a point where I was bored at work, I wanted to drop out again, and I just was not having fun. But then I realized that maybe there's a better way to describe myself, and having that attitude of being judgmental about where I am in my career wasn't helping. It's true that a lot of people would kill to have my job. It's true that a lot of people are unemployed, especially young people. They're desperate to get a job, but that doesn't help me. So I decided to kind of take a step back, and I thought that I'm just disengaged at work, and there can be a solution to this. So again, it was the wrong environment. I think I just wasn't learning as fast as I wanted to, and I had to move on and look for more challenging things to do. So the important thing to know here is, how do you find out what is the right environment for you? How do you find out when the time is right, when you're at the right place, around the right people? I think it's all about developing good filters. Your primary filter is understanding that only you know what's best for you. So take advice from other people, that's totally fine. But you have to understand that sometimes people give you really, really well-intentioned advice that's just absolutely downright awful for you. So just kind of something to be aware of. So this brings me on to the topic of mentorship. The traditional wisdom is that early on in your career, you do need a mentor to show you the way. But there are a couple of points that I wanted to discuss here. In his book, Smart Cuts, Shane Snow argues that training with masters will actually help you accelerate your career. And he actually gives an example, a lot of good examples that I do agree with. One of them is our very own Justin Bieber. So he talks about how Justin Bieber had not one, but two mentors. He had Usher, and he also had his talent manager, Scooter Braun. So in under 4 years, Justin became the third most powerful celebrity in the world. That was according to Forbes, wasn't Justin himself. He does have some facts, I guess, sometimes. So what do we take away from this? Does having mentors help you accelerate your career? Does it mean you will be twice as successful in half the time? I would not be so fast to jump to that conclusion. There's countless studies that actually show that corporate programs that emphasize mentorships just do not work. And we don't really fully know why, but that just seems to be it. They do not produce quantum leaps of performance. If you have not read the book Lean In, you probably don't work in tech. But Sheryl Sandberg in her book offered a really good piece of advice. And she said that the search for a mentor is the professional equivalent of waiting for Prince Charming. It just teaches women to be dependent once again. She, of course, does not recommend that you throw the baby out with the bathwater. Her solution is that you seek task-specific advice to the problems that you're having from a whole variety of people. And to me, that makes perfect sense for one reason. It encourages you to grow your networks. Now, we all know the importance of our work networks, but what I wanted to talk about is our networks and lives outside of tech. When I started planning for this talk, I thought about all my options. Do I use PowerPoint, Keynote, clip art, nice images? And then I decided, you know what? One of the things that we all share here is that we spend way too much time in front of computers. And sometimes it's just nice to take a step back and talk to people face to face. It just feels good. So here I am. No slides. All I have is my very rough handwritten notes about what I'm going to talk about. So moving on to that, I wanted to talk about how there is life outside of tech. And we do need to learn to unplug sometimes. For me personally, I like to read, I like to work out, and I like to socialize and not on Facebook. Last year, I took up running. I now can run 10K in the time it used to take me to find a show on Netflix. So that was one of the most important things I did for my health. And I think for most of us here, when we have sedentary jobs, we just have to make the time for that. Something that we have lost in our urban lives is far horizons. When we lived in more agricultural societies, our eyes used to shift back and forth a lot between objects near and far. And nowadays, us staring at computer screens all the time, that variety of perspective is just being lost, literally and figuratively. There was a study that was published by the Brian Holden Institute of Vision, and it projected that by the year 2050, half of the world's population, about 5 billion people, will be short-sighted. And 20% of that will be at elevated risk of permanent blindness. Now, imagine that. 1 billion people, that's like the populations of Canada, USA, Japan, Central America, South America, all at elevated risk of blindness. And what was the reason for that? I'm going to have to get some advanced piece of technology here to make sure I get it right. So the reason for 5 billion people damaging their eyesight is lifestyle changes resulting from a combination of decreased time outdoors and increased near-work activities. Near-work activities, as in staring at a computer screen. So the organizers of this event asked me to talk about something motivational and some lessons learned, and I think that ticks both boxes. Hopefully what you just learned will motivate you to get out even more. And just being in Canada, I think we're so lucky. We're blessed to have some of the most beautiful scenery in the world. Tourists pay thousands of dollars to come to see Niagara Falls for a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And if you were to ask yourself when was the last time you've been there, like show of hands, how many people have been there in 2016? Okay, few. How many have stared at a computer screen every day since, yeah? Quite a few more people. Okay, so like not judging anyone, I'm probably the world's worst offender. Last time I was there was like 2014, and I stared at a computer screen every day since 2009. So yeah. But you know what else might happen if you step out and get outside a little bit more? You meet people who work outside of the tech industry. And they're probably one of the most important part of your job network. We all work in a bubble. We live in a bubble. And just being inside that environment causes us to create these like feedback loops where we just like cannot see what's like right in front of our eyes. And it is a problem. There is just there's lack of external insight, and our ideas become so much more limited because of that. I wanted to share a study done by a psychologist at University of McGill. And what he had looked into was how scientists worked. And he did it Big Brother style. He actually like installed cameras in the labs and watched scientists as they worked. And what he learned was that this whole notion of a single scientist working really hard late at night on their own and suddenly like saying, Eureka, it's not right. What was a lot more fruitful was working in teams. And it was more things that were happening around meetings and the conference table. As Stephen Johnson puts it in his book, Where Good Ideas Come From, the ground zero of innovation was not the microscope. It was the conference table because the group environment helped recontextualize problems. Okay, so teams are good, but there's still a problem, the bubble. If everybody on your team thinks the same way, there's still a problem. So another study I was actually reading about talks about that a little bit more. And this prof from Stanford Business School, his name is Martin Roof, decided to look into the relationship between innovation and social networks. So he followed graduates of the program, especially the ones who had gone on to have entrepreneurial careers. And what he found out was that consistently, the most creative people were the ones who had a broad network that extended outside of their organization and included people from a diverse set of fields and with different like expertise. And when he talks about diversity, he doesn't talk about diversity of race or sexual orientation. He specifically looked at diversity of profession and experience. So what does this tell us? It tells us that we, in our development teams, need to get out more and include real people in our lives so that we can have more of what Roof calls coffee house networks. So Your Honor, if you're free next Monday, I'd love to meet for coffee. Everyone else, if you take the bus to work, you just might bump into Justin Trudeau, or try the Toronto Zoo. He was there today hugging pandas. It's actually true. So one last thing I wanted to talk about is that you also need to include your customers in your expectation. And it's because people run with your technology and come out with ways of using it that you've never, ever dreamed of. To practice what I preach, I'm going to use something outside of tech. Play-Doh. Play-Doh, when it was first invented, it was a wallpaper cleaning product. And then classrooms started using it for their modeling projects. And then Play-Doh was rebranded and remarketed and sold to schools as a toy. All right, so I've covered quite a few things here about lessons I've learned from my very short life. If there is one thing above all that I want you to take away from this, it would have to be about developing filters. Without good filters, you will always be at the wrong place, wrong time, with the wrong people. Use your judgment, develop good filters. You'll hear tons of advice. Some of it is right for you, some of it is not. Some of it needs to be adapted. Use your judgment, figure out what's right for you. Thank you.